All done. Okay.
So as the nice lady said, this meeting is being recorded. And hello everyone to our community call and ask me anything session. This week we have Auryn Macmillan with us. CLRFUND next round. What number round was it? He's going to tell us. It was the biggest round, and he's going to tell us the experience that they had this time. And we're going to start a conversation with Auryn. Auryn, the stage is yours.
Hey guys, how's it going? Fazla, thanks for inviting me along. Always fun to come and join these sessions. Yeah, I don't know where you want to jump in. I guess maybe we just quickly, for anyone that's not aware of it, give an overview of what CLRFUND is, and then we can, I don't know, let the conversation roll where it will. So yeah, for anyone that hasn't used or seen CLRFUND or heard of it yet, it's a quadratic funding protocol built on Ethereum that leverages BrightID for its Sybil resistance. And so I guess a really quick primer there on quadratic funding. It's an algorithm for efficiently allocating funding to public goods. So essentially we have a pot of funding that is contributed to by philanthropic donors. They essentially say, we want this funding to be allocated to public goods projects in the Ethereum space. But we don't know which projects are the best ones to do it to, or kind of like how to split up the funds between these projects. And so the quadratic funding algorithm is a way of splitting up that funding between eligible recipients, and it essentially uses inputs from direct contributors to decide how to allocate the funding. So it takes, I guess, to get a little bit more in the weeds, it takes the square root of the amount of funding that you contribute to a project and uses that as your vote weight towards allocating the matching pool to that project. And so everyone's, or the square roots of everyone's contributions are all added up, and that becomes the kind of vote weight towards that project. And then the matching pool is kind of divided up accordingly. And so it's a really cool algorithm because it's essentially optimizes for utility maximization. It's this kind of utility maximizing function that essentially tries to allocate the funds to wherever is going to have the kind of most, the greatest kind of aggregate utility for the entire ecosystem. Yeah, I guess maybe that's a quick little primer. And CLRFUND specifically is kind of an on-chain implementation of this. It uses zero-knowledge proofs for collusion resistance, and it leverages BrightID for Sybil resistance. And so we've been running it now for 7 rounds. This is the one that just finished is round 7. We had we put in $8,000 of matching funds, so still relatively small fries, kind of in the grand scheme of things, but we've been deliberately kind of scaling it up slowly. Put in $8,000 of matching funds, and that elicited about $7,000 in direct contributions and another $3,000 in contributions to the matching pool. So from the point of view of like efficient use of capital, it's really great because it's kind of more efficient for everyone involved. You know, someone contributing to public goods as a whole puts money into the matching pool, and then that matching pool then elicits this kind of direct contributions from a whole bunch of other users out in the space who kind of want to contribute directly to the projects that they value. And then from a direct contributor point of view, your contributions are more valuable as well because you're earning a chunk of this matching pool for the projects that you're contributing to. So every dollar you contribute is worth more than $1 for the project that you contributed to. So yeah, anyway, that's I guess a high level overview of kind of what CLRFUND is, what quadratic funding is, and how we're using BrightID. Pasla, is there anything else you want to touch on there?
Sure. I think the first question would be some statistics. Give us some statistics of how many rounds have you gone through, and you just told us that the biggest one so far was this one. Do we have the number of participants so far?
Yeah, so this is our 7th, well, actually 8th round, round 7. We were 0 indexed. So I guess we started at round 0, and round 7 is our 8th round, which is confusing but fun. So we every round we've kind of scaled up. Well, we've chopped and changed the matching pools a little bit, but the aim is to kind of scale them up each round. We've had to take a step back a couple of times to fix issues and kind of test. But basically every round the number of contributors has increased. You know, round 0 we had 17 contributors. Round 1 we had 26 contributors. Round 3 we had 31 contributors. Round 4 41, and then this one was by far the highest at 512, and that actually was after having scaled up the cap on the number of participants. So there's the underlying contracts that we use, Macy, have this hard cap or had a hard cap on the number of participants that could participate in a round. For this past round, that was 512, and so we hit that still with 4 or 5 days to go. And so I'm not sure how much higher it might have gone if we had not hit that cap. But that was pretty exciting to bump up against that cap again. Back in round 4, we hit the message cap and had to change the contracts that we used to increase the size of the round. And so it's neat to see it again bump up against that cap and force us to try and scale again. Luckily, Macy, the minimal anti-collusion infrastructure, the contracts that kind of underlie CLRFUND contracts, they've just introduced an update that eliminates that cap altogether. So next round, sky's the limit. We can go as high as we need.
That's awesome. Is it going to still run quickly? I know that was like one of the previous reasons you had to have such limits.
When you say quickly, what do you mean?
Like you guys were afraid that it was going to take huge like computational power and time to like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there'll still be like a linear cost increase in terms of computation for every additional participant and every kind of additional message that they send. But I mean, I think it's necessary eventually to be able to remove that cost and that cap and just eat the cost of that computation. You know, it's one of those things that like it will take either more time or more money in terms of like how long that takes. Like we can obviously rent a really big server for a relatively short time and crunch it out sooner. It's just it's a matter of what kind of hardware we're running it on and what the trade-off between the length of the computation and the cost to speed it up is.
It blows me away that it is that computationally expensive. I remember when you guys were sort of first coming, you're like, how long it would take? And I was like, what about this takes so much computational power?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the best person to get into that on a really technical level, but essentially, like we're running, you're having to generate this zero knowledge proof, which runs this, I guess, or you use this program called a circuit, and it kind of runs the inputs through this circuit and then spits out the output. And I guess some part of that circuit is particularly computationally heavy. And so, yeah, it takes a considerable amount of time. So like the computation to get the results for this round is still ongoing. It started last night and it's still kind of crunching away. And yeah, exactly what it is in that is so computationally heavy, I'm not entirely sure. Actually, Adam may have a better idea of that than I do. But yeah, the ZK SNARK computations are tricky from that point of view, in that we definitely have to make a trade-off between kind of time and expense to crank them out at the end of each round. And I guess it's worthwhile pointing out that up to date, like we've been doing it just on like consumer hardware, just on someone's laptop or desktop, as opposed to renting servers to do it. So it hasn't actually cost really anything, but that's a reasonable trade-off since we're dealing with small matching pools. You know, as we increase the scale of the matching pool, then it probably makes more and more sense to increase the computational capacity we have so that we can crank them out in a reasonable amount of time.
I want to ask and I'm sorry if it's a very extremely noob question, but what exactly is being processed that takes so much time? You said it started last night, it's still going on. And it was about 500 participants who selected some projects that they want to contribute to, and there's a pool of matching funds. And like in my mind as a noob, it's like you get the square root of each participant's Adam is smiling. Each participant's donation, and then you like it's like a calculating easy stuff. I wonder what is actually being calculated.
Right. So the actual like calculation itself is relatively simple. Like we could do that in a spreadsheet and it would be done in minutes. What is difficult is doing that calculation in an environment where the inputs are completely hidden. So like what we actually end up putting on chain is a proof that all of the inputs led to this output, but not the inputs themselves. So that's the kind of computationally complex part, is being able to generate this proof that satisfies satisfies the contract or like causes the contract to believe that the inputs actually led to this output. Without that, then we lose this kind of property of collusion resistance. So one of the really key pieces to CLRFUND is the ability to keep all of the inputs hidden. You as a contributor contribute some amount of funding to the round, but then how you allocate that funding to the projects in the round is kept totally secret, to the point that actually you can't even prove it to anyone else how you did it. So not only can no one else see it, but you, if you wanted to, can't kind of conclusively prove how you voted.
So we're doing it as a zero knowledge approach, where right, as you said, so that the projects that might have bribed me wouldn't know that which projects that I actually ended up contributing to. So it makes it obsolete to like try to bribe users to donate to your project.
Exactly. Yeah.
And to clarify, you can still like collude. It's just that they could turn around and change it. Right, I can still say to all of you guys, hey, I'll pay you to do this, and you do it, and then you just don't change it.
Right, and I mean, as a participant, that's the optimal behavior, right? The optimal behavior is to accept any bribe and then just vote however you like and disregard what they asked you to do, because you can't prove to them how you voted and they can't see how you voted. And then the same thing, like if it's not a bribe, if it's some other kind of collusion, if it's some kind of social pressure or whatever, then same thing. The optimal behavior is just to tell them, yes, I'll vote however you want, and then vote however you actually want to, and disregard their input.
Can I ask which entity or legal entity is providing the matching pool of funds? Is it Ethereum Foundation?
Yeah. So these matching funds have kind of come from a pool of funds that have been contributed actually in Gitcoin grants, as well as some funding from the Ethereum Foundation. And as we move forward and start scaling things up, then we have some other grants that have already been approved from the Ethereum Foundation to scale up the matching pool, and then a whole bunch of kind of soft commits and interest from other parties contributing to the matching pool as well. But we're just waiting to I guess be comfortable scaling. And one of the pieces to that is going to be a migration from XDAI over to kind of a true layer 2. We're waiting on some kind of other dependencies to move to a layer 2 before we settle on it and start to scale it up on there. And so those are things like Kleros Curate, which is the TCR that we had used at one point for the recipient registry. BrightID, obviously having the BrightID contracts over there, and then the Gnosis safe is what we use as the kind of owner contract for the round. So those 3 pieces of infrastructure need to be deployed on whichever layer 2 we want to adopt for the kind of larger scale rounds.
Are you sort of just kind of waiting to follow wherever people happen to go? Do you have like a front runner you're pushing for? Where are you in that?
Yeah, I think we're to a certain extent we're dependent somewhat on where Claros deploys. If we want to continue to use Claros's curate registry as our registry. That said, the last couple of rounds on XTI, we've been using a different registry contract, this kind of optimistic registry, where anyone can submit a recipient, but then there's a multisig that's kind of responsible for denying things that are obviously not public goods. So we could move forward with that and not be dependent on Claros, but we're very hesitant to scale things up while there's still kind of that type of centralized control over the registry management. So we'd very much prefer to have something like a TCR in place to take care of that registry. So yeah, I'd say more than likely Claros will be the big determining factor, like whichever true L2 they deploy to first will probably be where we end up. And my guess is that that'll be Arbitrum, just because they've already indicated that they were interested in doing it. Two, because Omen is planning to deploy to Arbitrum or has already deployed something to Arbitrum, and Omen and Claros are kind of pretty tightly coupled. And three, Arbitrum's already live, and the other kind of true L2s are not, or at least like the other EVM compatible true layer 2s are not. I think like my personal preference is probably for ZK Sync's EVM compatible chain, but that won't be live until later in the year, apparently. I think we got a bit of fun background noise.
So my layman understanding is that BrightID doesn't care what blockchain someone's using. Does BrightID need to do something to enable this for you?
Right. Yeah. So BrightID itself doesn't necessarily need to. We just need to have an instance of the BrightID contracts that have been deployed already onto mainnet and onto XDAI and stuff like that. Need an instance of those up on whichever chain we deploy to, and then I guess the BrightID nodes also need to then know to check that chain. So yeah, there's a little bit of stuff that BrightID may need to do. Adam can talk to that more than I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to set up. It's just deploying this smart contract again on the new chain, and then listening for events. I mean, the amount of work that needs to be done to make that transition is, from CLRFUND's perspective, there's probably a lot more that has to be done that's not related to BrightID. Just moving over all the contracts. There's just one contract that's related to BrightID that also needs to be moved over. And then from BrightID's side, what we do is we have one of the settings for an application is the RPC node that it's listening to for events. And events, when it's EVM compatible, those events look the same no matter what chain it's on. So you can listen for events on ID chain, you can listen on the XDAI chain, you can listen on mainnet. Those are the three that we're currently doing. But so we just need to put in an RPC node on from Arbitrum in the settings so that it checks for events there, and that's it. So it's just a setting change on from BrightID's side for the CLRFUND application. So very easy.
I see a question in the comments here from Han asking what's the benefit of this over Gitcoin? What's the advantage compared to Gitcoin? And I wouldn't necessarily position it as an advantage, just as potentially a different option. And there's a bit of a kind of long and colorful history actually between Kevin and I from Gitcoin, we both kind of started down this same path on very kind of tangential journeys, but around the same time in 2018, there was a discussion about block reward funding. And essentially the idea being that some portion of the Ethereum block rewards should go towards funding Ethereum's public goods. And the kind of place that those conversations almost always broke down was essentially in deciding or in who gets to decide where those funds go, who gets to decide how they're allocated or how they're spent. And so both Gitcoin and this are kind of an attempt to provide the ecosystem with mechanisms to fund public goods. And Gitcoin took a very pragmatic approach to kind of growing a community and an ecosystem first, starting with something that was very centralized and kind of progressively decentralizing it. And then CLRFUND probably took a less pragmatic approach to it, but a more I guess like pure decentralized approach to it. And I said, okay, we're going to go out and build a solution to this that is as decentralized as possible. You know, the aim being to build something that is would be a viable recipient for something like block rewards funding. You know, if that were to ever be a thing, and kind of in doing so, did so kind of at the cost of being able to kind of quickly ramp up a community or anything like that, or quickly ramp up matching pools. But the really nice thing with it is the kind of, I think what we'll start to see is a bit of a convergence now between projects like Gitcoin and CLRFUND in terms of how they leverage one another. So yeah, again, I'd be really hesitant to say that like what's the advantage of this over something like Gitcoin, because I think they'll start kind of trending in the same direction. But the idea is to the idea for kind of CLRFUND is to create something that is a viable recipient for something like block reward funding. So it's a fund allocation protocol as opposed to kind of a fund allocation organization. And ideally, it's something that runs in as trustless a way as possible. So all of the computation, all of the kind of fund allocation happens either on chain or via some mechanism that's then provable or verifiable on chain. And wherever possible, we've taken steps to kind of eliminate any central actors. There are still points of trust in the system. It's not totally trustless, but yeah, that's, I think, like the big difference is that just how we've approached the problems, or the side of the problem that we've each chosen to approach. And I think like from the ecosystem's perspective, it's really great to have teams working from opposite sides of the problem and being able to kind of converge and then share information. And ultimately will end up leading to a kind of more robust ability for the Ethereum ecosystem to fund its public goods. I think I see.
Yeah,
cool.
I thought Han has a question, but yeah, he was showing the thumbs up. Right now, what is the? I have two questions. Let's ask the easier one first. Right now, what is the process of a project that is seeking funds to get in touch and have their project there and be a part of those the projects in the next round?
Yeah.
Is it me or?
No, it's not you. I can't hear me. Uh-oh.
Maybe he has lost his connection, but he's going to be back. Yeah.
What was the last question? I think I also missed the question.
I was asking what the process is for a project to get on CLRFUND and be on the next round.
Okay, so you have to. Hopefully, Auryn will come back soon. But the way you do it is you have to create an entry in the Claros curate. Oh, it looks like Auryn's back. So
yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. So I was just answering the question about how a new project gets into the CLRFUND, into the next round as a recipient.
Yeah.
And it starts with,
yeah.
and all I said so far was that it starts with adding an entry into the CLRFUND registry and then uploading your
Well, so that's, as of right now, that's not quite right. We used to use, we were up until a few rounds ago using CLRFUND on mainnet, but because of the outrageous spike in gas prices for a while there, Curate was just totally unusable on mainnet. And so we switched over to using an optimistic registry, which is the one that I talked about earlier, where there's a multisig that's able to kind of veto new applications if they're clearly spam or malicious or just not, don't meet the criteria for being public goods. So the process for adding a project right now is literally just going to CLR.FUND, CLR.FUND, hitting the registry tab, and then there's a submit proposal button or submit project button. You hit that, fill out some details, and submit it. And then basically there's a waiting period there where the submission can be vetoed if it's not an Ethereum public good.
We lost Auryn again.
Yeah, so when he comes back, something I want to ask is if we're gonna
point,
there
we'll
he
probably
is.
change the UI. Oh, sorry, was I dropping?
Oh
out
yeah,
again?
you were. We couldn't hear you for like 20 seconds there.
Oh no.
But no,
sorry about that.
I think we caught. I think we caught your answer though. But I have a question, which is do we see ourselves going back to CLRFUND, or do we think that this new approach is even better, where it's like there's just only the multisig can veto, as opposed to CLRFUND, where it's like anyone can come in and veto?
Yeah, I absolutely want to go back to CLRFUND or some other TCR-like setup. I really dislike the current setup where we have a multisig because I think it concentrates too much power. It has too much of a dependency on a small number of people. So I have a very strong preference towards much more open permissionless systems. That said, there's a practical side to that where they ideally need to be on the same network, or else you kind of are introducing elements of trust either way. So yeah, that's the big roadblock for moving back to something like CLRFUND, is just having that system exist on the same network. And I think now that we've kind of experienced CLRFUND with the registry inside the UI, embedded in the UI, I think that next time, if we go back to CLRFUND, what we'll probably do is just build all of those interactions into our own UI, rather than shipping people back out to the CLRFUND application to add projects to the registry or to interact with the registry. And apologies for the choppy video. I'm out in the country today, up at the lake, and give you guys a quick little view of the woods here.
Oh, nice.
But one of the issues with being out somewhere remote is choppy internet. So yeah, apologies.
I have a curious question that I've been asking many times, and I still haven't found the answer to. And I want to ask you, what should happen on CLRFUND in the process of users registering and not registering, like connecting their wallet, connecting their BrightID, and contributing, that you are positive that this person is colluding, this person is a person who has multiple BrightID accounts in his hand?
So we don't check for that. We essentially rely on BrightID for Sybil resistance. So the kind of assumption there is that BrightID is doing its achieving its purpose kind of thing in at least limiting, giving us this kind of probabilistic proof of uniqueness. And so I think like from our point of view, like if someone's able to get 2 or 3 or 4, a small handful of identities, it's a bummer. It hurts the system a little bit, but it doesn't break it. I think when it really starts to break the system is when someone's able to get hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of identities and is able to kind of gain really disproportionate control over the funding pool, over the allocation of the funding pool relatively cheaply. So if someone has a kind of small handful of identities or BrightID profiles, and they're able to kind of split what would be one contribution into 5 and gain a slightly disproportionate influence, like I said, it's not ideal. It definitely hurts the system, but I don't think it breaks it. It's only at that much larger scale that I think it really starts to break the system.
I see.
And I see there's a question in the comments from Serge. So which projects in this round are you personally most interested in? So let me just pull up the list of projects again so I can be absolutely sure. I mean, obviously BrightID is a recipient, so I'm always have been a big fan of BrightID for several years now. There's some others in there that I think are really valuable projects. I mean, most of them on the list are pretty awesome, but in no particular order, I think Wallet Connect is something that really has been valuable for the ecosystem, and I would like to see it supported more. Hardhat is an unbelievable tool for Solidity development. So really glad to see that on there. TurboGeth is a monumental improvement in the way that Ethereum nodes kind of function and kind of enables some pretty unbelievable performance improvements for Ethereum nodes, which I think like the not so obvious flow-on effect from that is that it should allow some measure of scaling for the Ethereum network in that we can more realistically raise the block gas limit because of the performance improvements that TurboGeth enables. Some others on the list that I'm particularly interested in, the Ethereum cat herders. They do some really great work in herding the many disparate parties, kind of getting information from the many disparate stakeholders in the Ethereum ecosystem. The Radical Exchange Foundation is a recipient as well, and that's obviously in large part where the whole kind of inspiration for this type of funding mechanism came from. So really happy to support them as well. And then obviously CLRFUND is a recipient, and I'm pretty into CLRFUND.
Can we know which projects have been getting the most contributions so far?
We don't have that information yet for this round, but for the previous round, that information is up on the blog. I can quickly take a look at it. So for round 5, which was a smaller round, it looks like CLRFUND followed by Rotkey and TrueBlocks were the top 3. And then it looks like TurboGeth slightly after that. For round 4, we had, just taking a look, looks like BrightID was the top earner in round 4, with maybe CLRFUND coming in a close second, Wallet Connect in 3rd, and TurboGeth in 4th. Or maybe Rect actually in 4th, Rect News. And then round 3 was a somewhat similar distribution, CLRFUND, BrightID, Hardhat, and Giveth.
Auryn, I'm curious,
yeah, so
why isn't that data like really obviously available to me as a user when I like go to the site?
Yeah, so it's not available on the UI, because we just haven't had the capacity to expose it yet. Like as in, we just haven't had the dev capacity to add those kind of features yet. I would very much like to. It is all up on the blog though. If you go to the recap posts after each round, you'll see a nice bar chart there that shows the distribution for each round. But yeah, I would definitely like to add that information. It is actually all there, just not displayed very prettily. So if you go to the previous rounds in the left hand, like the rounds tab, yep, over in the left column, then pick a round and navigate into a project or a recipient, you'll be able to see how much they actually received if you're connected. And so like you can navigate into each project and see how much they received, but you can't see it kind of all in one place.
And when I look at the number that's showing me there, is that the number, the total they got all in with donation and matching?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the amount that they got out of the round, including the matching funds and the direct contributions they received. So there's a kind of parallel work stream going on with this to build another instance of CLRFUND, and that team that's working on that right now is actually building a really nice leaderboard as well that will expose some of this in a much more user-friendly, much more appealing way. So I'm looking forward to those changes getting kind of merged back into the canonical instance as well. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how much detail I'm supposed to share on that the other instance of it, so I'm going to keep that close to my chest for the time being.
Cool. So folks, if there are no other questions, I'm looking at your faces to see if there is anything that anyone wants to ask.
I have another question. Auryn, you know, in the Gitcoin community, there's been discussions that sort of like, what should qualify for the round? And one of the interesting questions is like, if they have a token, if they've gotten VC funding. And as a steward, I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. Wondering what your thoughts are on that kind of question for CLRFUND.
Yeah, so I had this discussion with Adam yesterday, actually. And my take on it is that whether you have received VC funding or sold a token or received kind of any other kind of funding, to me is pretty irrelevant. To me, it's more about how the funds that you receive are going to be used. So as long as, in my opinion, as long as the funds that you're receiving, if you can kind of reasonably demonstrate that they will be used for something that is actually a public good, I think that the rest of it is pretty redundant or pretty irrelevant. So if a good example in the CLRFUND round is Minerva, a Android or a mobile wallet for Ethereum. They just recently sold a token, but their kind of pledge, I guess, to the CLRFUND community, or like what they've communicated, is that any funds received via CLRFUND go only towards supporting the pieces of their application, the parts of their application that are actually public goods. And so the really nice kind of quality, I think, of this, this is the same for, say, Rotkey, which has a kind of premium service. The really nice piece of this is that it enables, I think it like better enables some of these projects to keep a really full functioning free tier of their product they can offer as this kind of public good, and not have the same kind of pressure or the same amount of pressure to section off pieces of their product behind some kind of a paywall. And they may still choose to do that with parts of it, but it should ultimately result in more fully featured free products that are kind of legitimate public goods. And I think it also creates this kind of social pressure then to keep those pieces that were funded that way as public goods kind of in perpetuity. where in other situations there's probably more of an incentive for them over time to kind of move more and more behind the paywall.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Auryn, for taking the time in short notice
like we got
and
one
being
more,
here. Oh yeah,
like
will there be a clear token in the future? Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a need for it. CLRFUND.
That's not. This is blocked. This is crypto, man. That's not the question.
Well, no, I mean, I think this is a question that every crypto project should ask themselves. And if they don't, then it's a poorly designed kind of economic system, token economic system. And I think, like in the case of CLRFUND, it's reasonably clear that it doesn't need a token, at least at this stage. I think there's maybe some, in the distant future, there may be some pieces of this that you could design crypto economic systems around. And when I say that, I mean in terms of things like developing networks of people that would stake to then participate in or be like picked to be a party to a multi-party computation that is the coordinator or something like that. I think there's potential for things like that to evolve, but there's no clear need for it at this stage. And so, like in the absence of a clear need for the token, it just makes no sense for us to create one. And I think, like, ideally, this is something that's designed to, or is intent to benefit Ethereum public goods. So if there is a need for a governance token or a governance framework, which there absolutely is need for governance, I think my preference would be to fall back on Ether as that governance token, as opposed to spinning up a new governance token, because CLRFUND doesn't need to sell it to generate revenue. It already has revenue streams in terms of like the grant funding that it receives from other entities like the Ethereum Foundation or Moloch or Gitcoin grants, and then also from its own funding rounds. Like it's been one of the most consistent earners from its own funding rounds, and so assuming that those things can continue to operate as they have been, then yeah, it has no immediate need for generating other revenue streams. And I think that helps to keep it more credibly neutral, which is the ultimate goal there.
I agree, you probably don't need a token, although I do want you guys to have more funding so you can have more developers. I watch the Telegram chat, and it's people's seventh priority. Everyone's busy, and they don't view it as their top thing. Now you've got some great people that build it, but they've got other priorities, and I just want to see CLRFUND.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's where, like, as we start to scale it up a little bit more, once we land on a real L2, then CLRFUND will start to have a little bit more revenue coming through from those rounds that it can then kind of put towards reinvesting into the CLRFUND protocol and application, and ultimately making it a better experience for everyone.
Is there any plan to make this process of the project signing to be a part of the CLRFUND permissionless in the future?
Yes, so that's what we talked earlier about, this kind of TCR that we used to use, Clarus Curate, and so that process was permissionless. It's still the new kind of optimistic process is permissionless in terms of, like, it needs no active input from anyone else for a project to join the round, but there is a privileged multisig that can veto applications. So it's still permissionless, but it's not. I wouldn't call it trustless at this point. And the goal is definitely to get back to using something like Clarus Curate that's both permissionless and much less trustful.
I see. Folks, are there any other questions that we want to talk about, or Okay.
Let's get to the party.
Yes, we're going to start a party. Thank you, Auryn. Thank you big time for being here, for doing this. And yeah, we all hope, and I think no one has a doubt that CLRFUND is going to scale big time. And yeah, we wish you the best of luck. And of course, Adam is also a team member of CLRFUND as well. So we are tight.
Yeah, I'm really happy that Auryn thought to invite me as one of the contributors to the hackathon. That was a really awesome hackathon. That was actually my first hackathon that I've ever done, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a great project, great idea. I couldn't say no. So I'm glad that we got to do that, and it's lovely to see it taking off and growing legs, like huge giant legs that it has now. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Pasla, thanks for the invite. It's always fun to stop by, and always enjoy hanging out and interacting with everyone in the BrightID community.
Same here. Same here. Thank you. I'm gonna stop recording now. Thank you, everyone. And